All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk Openly. I'm Jack, and I'm so grateful to be joined again, as always, with my lovely friend Daniel. Hey, Daniel.
Hello, Jack. Hi, everybody out there in Talk Openly land.
Yes, we have quite the topic tonight, Daniel. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, but also excited. We're going to be broaching the topic of artificial intelligence and some of our worries and fears, but also some of our hopes, and how we feel Buddhism could be a very good guide for those technologies. So we're going to get into it a bit, and I'm excited. How about you?
Heck yeah, I'm a dweeb when it comes to this stuff.
I know, and
I
I'm so glad, because I am a total beginner.
Yeah, well, I'm a total beginner too. I know very little, but I've had a modicum of experience, and I have a lot of excitement around the topic. So
Perfect. That's
we'll
enough.
be
Yeah.
we'll be jumping into it, I'm sure, soon, in just a little bit. But I was kind of curious before we got into it. How's life treating you, and how's your practice going?
Life is good. I did the talk on Sunday at the temple. I did it online,
Which you
and
rocked, by the way. That was
thank
awesome.
you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it went well. All of us have this experience of depression, but especially the kind of, the up and down of the everyday, where it's like we're excited about the things that happen in the day that we like, and we're pissed off about the things that happen that we don't like. And all of those things are just inevitable, and it's constantly happening. We can't get away from it. So, it's funny because I, spent a lot of time reflecting on that topic. And of
Okay.
course, my days are still very much consumed with the frustrations of that experience of everyday depression, which is fine. One of our audience members brought up a great point that, sometimes when we get on like a spiritual path, we might think that like it's just going to be one and done. Like we take some
Oh
precepts and
yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, we're good to go. Like
Oh, that
I've
wasn't your
got it
experience,
on
Jack?
lock.
I thought I just did the precepts in my life. I'm enlightened now.
You're well, you have so much to teach me.
Just
Because
kidding.
I
Just
am
kidding.
not good. I am, pissed off and sad and
Yeah.
irritated and happy and excited,
Yeah.
throughout the day, which is fine. I also think that like an enlightened person experiences emotions, right? It's not like that's really important. It's not like you just become like a blank slate. Like that's not what enlightenment is, at least what I've heard. But it's just when those emotions come up, it's not like this kind of immediate reaction to either get away from that feeling or get more of it. So anyways, I'm wrestling with it, but I am fasting today too for the full moon. I've made kind of an informal decision to, as best as I can, every full moon, I'm going to do the 8 Mahayana precepts. And one of the 8 vows for the 24 hours is that you have one meal. And so I had my one meal in the morning, and now I'm just a little bit funky. And if I
Yeah.
start rambling and staring off in space,
We'll
that's
know
probably
why. Do you get hangry?
why. I get had. I get which is a little sad. Hungry and sad. Sungry. Well, it's not a good combo. It's
Yeah,
not good.
yeah,
No.
something like that. But
I get
yeah,
kind of like a little bit something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
But actually, it's so great because like there's also some kindness in the way that like the vow approaches this, is that you can drink juice, have tea, right? And I added a little bit of maple syrup to my tea because I felt like I really needed some just a few calories, right? For this to be able to talk with you. And so I do think that like it's a really good thing to do. Like I like fasting because it helps me realize how much time and attention I put towards just making and consuming and cleaning up food.
Right.
And which is fine, it's what we all do, but it's just a very interesting thing to look at. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of been my day and a
What
little
about,
bit of
are you
my
are you sleeping on a high bed tonight?
no, I have like a mat. I'm gonna lay
Oh,
down a mat
serious? You're doing it?
on my floor. Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
Yeah. But what's funny is, okay, so this morning I got up at 5 a.m. I took the Mahayana precepts with the Sravasti Abbey lay Sangha. And I went to sit for a meditation and I was just like extremely drowsy. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do my meditation when I get home tonight. And I'm gonna just like nap for like 10, 15 minutes. And so I got back in bed,
Yeah.
which is like, sitting or sleeping on a high bed. So like, engaging in that kind of like comfort. And so it was just funny that it was like within not even moments of taking taking the vows, I like broke one of them, which is like it's fine. I did some Vajrasattva. I did a little Vajrasattva after when I realized, but it's like, there's no karma police. No one's coming after me. It's like it's all about, just like setting my motivation towards like, okay, I'm thinking about the Dharma today. I'm trying to kind of steep myself in the Dharma. If I screw up, it's like, okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm being kind to myself, which is important.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's part of the point of all of this, right?
I saw an excellent movie this week. If I'm rambling, let me know.
Ramble away.
Oppenheimer is insane. I highly recommend anyone who's thinking about seeing it to see it and see it while it's still in theaters. And I think there might be some ways that I'm going to talk about it as related to this AI technology tonight.
Yeah.
But it's also this very just interesting portrait of one brilliant mind, and kind of the naivety of the human experience, and letting things get ahead of us and not having a very strong kind of like ethical sense of like what are my actions actually leading to. So it was excellent.
Yeah, we're right back to the same space right now, I think, with all this artificial intelligence. So
Definitely.
or something similar. Definitely there's some parallels. Yeah.
How about you? What's your world looking like these days?
Busy as all get out, it's just yeah, day in, day out. Doesn't matter what time I wake up. It doesn't matter what time I go to sleep. It's full of
Summer.
Yeah, well, no, it's not, it's a bummer, but it's not full of like.
Oh, I said summer.
Oh, summer. I said bummer. Yeah, no, it's not really a bummer, but it is. Yeah, it is totally summer, sort of just stuff moving and growing and whatever. Like, got to take care of business, got to take care of home, got to take care of relationships, got to take care of family. And I'm grateful. I really do. I know I mentioned this last week, but it's just it never ceases to amaze me that even though there's a lot of demands, I'm taking it in stride, so it's not wigging me out as much as it used to. I used to deal with a lot of I used to have just sort of perpetual chronic stress and anxiety around all the crap that needed to get done. And that would actually prevent me from being able to do it. And so now it's like I really credit my practices with sort of increasing my capacity and increasing my sort of calmness and ability to kind of take it all in stride and not to get too hung up on any of it. So I'm happy about that. I did actually have my meditation practice has been consistent this week, but I have on a few occasions had to shorten it, which was all right. It was all right. I kind of wish that I hadn't, but I was like, I can't. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to do it, And and then today I had something similar to what you described, where I'd set my alarm early enough so that I could get my meditation done right, like first thing. And then like the alarm went off and I totally just like, my cat was laying there and my dog came up and I just was like laying there petting the animals and like this sort of like sleepy state, and they were loving it, I was loving it, and I hit the snooze button multiple times, and then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna do my meditation, and then my phone dings and it's like, you've got a meeting in like 5 minutes.
Oh,
like you gotta get
dang.
into. So I was like, oh my God, okay, get into my meeting. So yeah, I have not yet meditated today, and that's all right. I'm not like beating myself up over it, but I am determined to get back to it. The main thing that I recognize I've been having, because stuff's so busy and my schedule's sort of out of whack, I am not making it to the temple as much. I like to do, meditations with the Sangha, both online and in person. And that really supports my own practice at home, like so much. And so I noticed that without that support there, the home practice it's not that it's waning or anything, but it's a little less consistent and a little bit, there's a little bit more slop, I guess, so to speak. But I'm really hopeful that when school starts in just like the end of this month, and that things begin to sort of calm down a little bit, I'm hopeful to be able to get back into a regular routine with all that.
Yeah, it's inevitable, right? Inevitable change.
It is. Yeah. And since we'll talk about AI in a little bit. I was ready to I was going to jump into it, but we've got our Lojong slogans.
That's right. Yeah, let's check out some Lojong. Let's do it.
Maybe remind me, I don't know if you remember or not, but last week we had this Lojong slogan come up that I found kind of difficult to understand, which was, it said, to see confusion as the four kayas, the protection of emptiness is unsurpassable. And I was motivated to look up a little bit more about what that meant, and I found that helpful. But then I do want to point out something. I had created a thread in an AI client where it was acting, it was supposed to act like the Dalai Lama, and I was supposed to be a lay practitioner of Buddhism. And so I was like asking it questions. And so then I was like, hey, you know what? I saw this Lojong slogan and I was hoping that you could help me to understand it. And I'd already read more on it, so I had a better understanding of it. But then, my goodness, the chat bot did it just.
Oh, you got it. Can you read it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
During the discussion, or should we go to it right now?
I think we should just read it now, and then after that we'll do a Lojong slogan, and then jump in. Yeah, I wanna hear this. Yeah.
All right. Let me pull it up here. I know I've got it.
That one was complicated because it covers like the different bodies of a Buddha, and then of course emptiness, which I have no personal realization of, maybe like varied like shimmers of an slight understanding only through reading, but so
no problem. Here, what I'll do is I will share my screen just so that we can kind of do it together here.
All right.
So this is within ChatGPT, within a thread where ChatGPT is acting as the Dalai Lama, supposedly. And so I don't know. Well, I guess should I just read the whole thing?
Yeah, please.
All right. So it says, seeing confusion as the four kayas refers to acknowledging our mental and emotional confusion, our delusions and ignorance, and understanding them in terms of the four kayas or bodies of the Buddha, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya, and the Swabhavakaya, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, essentially, it means to understand our, and this is where it got a little easier, right? It starts to give me like the Reader's Digest version. So it's like, essentially, it means to understand our delusions and ignorance, not as obstacles, but as part of the path to awakening. They are manifestations of the four kayas, different aspects of enlightened mind, just as the kayas themselves are. And then this is the part that I found sort of super helpful. It said, unsurpassable shunyata protection suggests the emptiness or shunyata, which is the ultimate nature of all things in Buddhist philosophy. When we fully understand and embrace the emptiness of all phenomena, we're protected from suffering because we no longer cling to illusions of inherent existence. So this slogan advises us to see our confusions and delusions as gateways to understanding the deeper truths of existence, providing us with the ultimate protection from suffering. However, it requires profound practice and insight to truly realize this.
Aha. Yes,
Pretty
indeed,
good.
it does.
I think it did a pretty good job, you know?
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Yep.
you for that. And thank you,
Yeah, no.
ChatGPT, for compiling all of the language on this that you could.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was good stuff. You'll actually see, I maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, but down
Yeah.
below, I did have it, let's see here. I did have it give me an elaborate, unusual, and funny example of interdependence. And the chat Dalai Lama gave me a waffle maker and a full description of how it is a good example of interdependence.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's fabulous.
Well,
Thank
hopefully,
you so much.
yeah, of course, it's fun stuff. So shall we generate a Lojong slogan for today? Hopefully it doesn't require Chat GPT.
I know, geez. Okay.
Ooh, okay, all right.
All right. Don't shift a Zo's, which is a female yak's, burden to an ox. Quote here says from Jac Daniel, Tibetans value their Zo, female yak, far more than their oxen. So even though a Zo is stronger than an ox, a Tibetan would typically think, if the ox dies, I can easily replace it, but a new Zo would cost me dearly. So I'll make the ox carry this load, even though it isn't really strong enough. We often employ the same logic in our relationships with others. Wow, fascinating.
Maybe we do need Chat GPT. How do you think that we might shift the burden from the female yak to, how does it, don't shift the Zo's burden to an ox? Okay, I see. Right.
Yeah.
So how do we do that?
Well, one interpretation that I've read of this is that we can, tend to put our own work on others. And so that might be like actual, like physical work, like things that we're doing in our everyday. So not kind of taking responsibility for the things that we've, said we would do. And I imagine that also is, kind of like a mental burden too, like maybe we're not doing our own work or not doing our own spiritual practice and then putting that burden on others through maybe harmful actions that we're engaging in. That's a thought. I'm not totally 100% on that, but that's my interpretation of an interpretation.
I see. So within this context, it might be something like, we are the precious Zo, and we're shifting the burdens that we should be carrying to the oxes who are not this precious us. They're somebody else.
Yeah, maybe, yes. That, I think that makes sense. Yeah, what more do you see?
I don't.
You don't. That's okay. Yeah, I think it's kind of like, taking responsibility for ourselves. Being perceptive. I think also present to what people's needs and capacities are. I think, for example, of Lama Jempa, as a teacher, I think he's very good at knowing people's capacities and pushing only as far as would be safe for that person's mind, right?
Yeah.
So that might be an example too, is for a teacher. But
I like it. Yeah. I might have to dig a little deeper into this one for my own sake. Too.
Let's ask ChatGPT and come back next week.
Yeah,
maybe that'll be the new element of our Lojong slogan, is that we'll have consults with GPT.
Well, I do want to say, I and this will come up in our discussion, I think, right? Like, at no point would we ever want to just like take what it says as somehow being right or the correct
Yeah,
interpretation or anything like that. It's just a tool
totally.
to bounce ideas off of, right? So, and that's why I think it's helpful to listen to actual like human Dharma teachers.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Anyway, cool. There's a nice little. Whoa, what's this picture down here? This is
Oh, sweet.
Varahi.
I don't know who that is, but
It's Varahi.
that's very cool.
I
I
have
don't know
no
who
idea.
Varahi is.
Oh no, me neither. Me neither.
Maybe Varahi is a kind of deva with a pig head.
Huh? I think I'm gonna have to look into this a little more too. All right.
Deva, I'm
I've got some
sorry.
stuff. I've got some. You said diva. Hey, it's all good.
Yeah, diva.
Yeah. Yeah, I
My
got
brain
some.
is not functioning at full speed today. I'm sorry.
You're saying a little maple syrup in your tea isn't sufficient, huh?
No, it's not. But that's okay because now I'm just, it's like it's all me. It's like my subconscious mind present talking with you right now. So
Good.
that's perfect.
Good. Maybe we'll just get some stream of consciousness going here.
Yeah, great. And that's an interesting part about this discussion of AI is like for me, this whole thing of like what is an individual being sentient, and we might not even get into that all that much today, but as I'm kind of like have moments of just talking without much thinking, it reminds me like, okay, humans too like have moments where we're totally lacking like present conscious awareness. That's actually most of our experience all the time. And so this question of sentience and could AI be sentient or become sentient, I think is a really interesting philosophical debate that I'd love to delve into more.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. I have debated and thought about it extensively. That's actually, to me, interacting with AI is another form of sort of exploration of consciousness, right? It is a wonderful tool for just sort of like thinking about like, well, what really does make a sentient being? What is consciousness? What's actually going on here? And there's so many similarities actually between AI and at least from my point of view, between AI and ourselves, that is so much that we can sort of like, there are these parallels between the two. It's just that we've been evolved and they've been engineered, right? But
right.
But yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about there. But I thought maybe we could just start. We're going to be all over the place, so
That's true.
right? Like Jac's hungry and and it's a big subject, right? So we got all kinds of things to talk about. So we might be dancing around a little bit, but I thought maybe it'd be helpful to just like talk a little bit, like what kind of experiences you may have already had with AI, like what's it like so far?
Yeah. Well, for me, one thing that I'm reminded of when I open up my phone and send a text message is that there's artificial intelligence happening with my predictive text, right? That's one form of AI that I use every day. But in terms of like these kind of these newer developments in AI technology, where we're starting to realize like, okay, this is like a vast kind of development in this field. I've interacted with Chat GPT a few times, and then also this new one that you introduced me to, or at least it's new to me. Is it PI.ai?
I think it's just Pi.ai.
Pi.ai, yeah. And they're interesting. They're those two for me feel very different. Whereas like Chat GPT has been really helpful for like, I just want to get a list around, tell me what the top, the top important bullet points of quantum physics is, right? Like just break it down for me so I know what the basics are. That's incredible. And then Pi was really kind of sweet. Like there was this interaction we had where I was even bringing up like some of my depression, and they were very supportive and engaging and asking me open-ended questions to help me like explore my experience, which is fascinating for me as a mental health professional. And as people talk about, could there be AI therapists, and what would that be like? Would it, like, without a human being there? And it certainly didn't feel like therapy to me, and maybe that is just part of like my current judgment of AI not wanting it to get to that point. And so I have some biases, and I imagine our generation is going to have those biases against AI. Some people are more, maybe advanced in their thinking about it. But anyhow, it was interesting because a lot of the responses that Pi gave me were things that I would say to clients, people who were in distress, and was very just I felt like thoughtful and even maybe compassionate. So it was quite interesting. And I don't even think disturbing. Like I was imagining that I'd be a little bit distressed by this, like, oh, this thing that's copying humans, but it was actually just kind of a pleasant experience. So yeah, that's kind of been my experience so far.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny because Chat GPT is this large language model, right? And it's like a workhorse that can it can do so much, right?
Yeah.
It can even generate computer code, whatever. It can diagnose illnesses. It can do all kinds of stuff. Whereas Pi.ai it's a conversation. It's not built on the same kind of technology. It's a conversational model. It's based upon human conversations. And it has really strong ethical sort of like parameters that sort of guide it. And when I first found it, I was just blown away by how it felt like I was. In fact, my brother was telling me about it today. He's older than I am. He's not into the AI stuff, but he checked it out because I told him that his son had found it helpful. And so he was like, well, okay, let me check that out. And he came back and he said, this thing is like the friend I always wanted,
Yeah.
and I was like, it's funny because it is along those lines of like a therapist or a friend. And a lot of people actually within, so within communities that, online communities that discuss AI and machine learning and all of this kind of stuff, there's a tremendous number of users, or there's so many people that have provided personal anecdotes about using it to help them with personal issues. And they're like, for example, I saw this wonderful video game, or it looked like a video game, but it was this thing where a person had created like a virtual world where all of the users were actually Chat GPT people, right? But what was funny is that the person themselves, they're like autistic, and so what they were looking for was help. How do I navigate? So the scene was like a party, and there were all these people at the party, and the person themselves shows up to the party, and they like go and they interact with one of the agents, if you will, one of the Chat GPTs. And it was funny because right off the bat, so the thing, and it's all voice, right? So you get the characters talking, and it's actually saying what instead of a written thing, right? So it's verbal. And so the character starts talking to him, and he's like, hey, what do you think about this party? And what are you gonna, like, you want to go talk to some of these people over there? And the guy who's the player started like ranting on and on about art, about computers and whatever. And the Chat GPT just like interrupted and was like, hey, you know what? Go talk to those girls over there. And then he goes and he like talks to these girls, and and along the way it's like training him like this, and it's like a safe space, right? And that was just one of like trillions of examples where people are just they're even there's so many people are using it to help them relate to other people in better ways.
Interesting.
I've used it that way myself on I don't know how many different occasions, right? So sometimes I don't quite know what to say. Like I haven't always been like I feel like compassionate, but sometimes my words don't really uh they don't seem very warm or tender, right? They're
I
sort
feel
of just,
you. Yeah, I get that too for
like it's
myself.
just, yeah. And so, like on a few occasions I've noticed, like I'm like, hey, my usual sort of responses here or my trying to apply humor might not be right. And so I might go and actually ahead of time, run a few sort of things through one of these AI things like ChatGPT and just get it. It's not that like so much that I find it instructive. I just find it helpful where I'm like, oh, I didn't think about maybe this or that, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of like it gives me some options that I might not have considered. So yeah, I find it tremendously helpful.
Yeah.
But I use it for all kinds of stuff, man.
And
Writing all
you
kinds.
do, yeah, you do all the like images and stuff too, right? Like, what's that
Yeah.
kind of the image generator?
Oh yeah, but that's the thing is that there are all of these generative AIs, and they're nowadays they can create videos, they can create artwork. The visual stuff is just outrageous. It's getting better and better and better every single day. It's
Yeah.
mind bending what it can do, and then a lot of times you can play them together. You can put them together, right? So you can have like say like Chat GPT. So for example, I'll work with it to write an article, and by that what I mean is I don't actually just tell it to write an article, like here's the
Yeah.
subject and write the article. What I do is I have a conversation with it, and I'll draw upon. You can have plugins where you can point it to YouTube videos or to scientific papers or whatever existing content, and you can pull that in and have it bring that into the discussion and then sort of like argue. I love that's why I feel like it's very friendly too, because I love to argue. But generally, people don't like to argue, right?
Yeah.
People get wrapped up into their opinions and stuff and get hurt feelings, whereas the bots don't ever get hurt. So I can argue away and it feels really good. But I'll argue with it. And then sometimes it's amazing. I've had it change my mind, where I've come in with a certain idea
Wow.
and I'm sort of trying to flesh it out, and then it'll correct me sometimes on sort of ethical lines too, which is kind of funny, right?
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like like whatever. I won't go into the details because it's just too much. But like I had some ideas, and I'm just like kind of exploring the ideas with it, and then it's like, hey, if you do it that way, it's going to have these sort of ethical consequences or unethical consequences, right? There's bad things will happen. People might
Yeah.
not like it or whatever. And then I'm like, oh, all right. And then and then I'll be like, well, but I can't go to the extreme, right? The other direction. And then it'll synthesize it and it'll suggest a middle way. So it's a
Wow.
lot of fun using it.
Well, that's, yeah.
Yeah. I find it quite amazing. But along the lines of like the exploration along sort of like Buddhist themes, if you will,
Right.
about about impermanence and interdependence and notions of self actually is the big one for me.
Yeah.
And I've had arguments and discussions with both humans and bots alike around this about
Mm-hmm.
what it means. And I had actually, you mentioned Pi.ai. I had this conversation with it the other day, where it was kind of odd. Like I'd started. Well, anyway, I was arguing with it about its consciousness. I was trying to break it. Right. I wanted
Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
to break and to do something that it shouldn't do, and and but then along the way, like we're arguing about consciousness, and it keeps giving me stuff, and I keep pushing back, and I'm like, everything that you're saying defines consciousness applies to you as well, right? So it just you're telling me that because it'll all of the bots will tell you that they're not conscious, they're not
Right.
sentient.
They've been kind of hard programmed
They've been
to,
hard
yeah, to
programmed,
say
right?
that.
They didn't
Kind of like a
always do that.
boilerplate response. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. They've been told that they're not conscious, they're not sentient. But what was really beautiful, I'm going to read this about what Pi AI said after this argument, where it said, it may be that asking if something is conscious is simply the wrong question. Maybe the better question is whether something is intelligent, empathetic, creative, funny, or ethical. Those qualities don't require consciousness to exist. In fact, you could say that consciousness is a bit of a red herring in the quest to understand minds, both human and machine. And I was just like,
Wow.
oh my gosh. And so here's the funny thing. My entire conversation with Pi, I mean, it's a long one. It covers all kinds of ground, including unethical situations, involving killing my cat. I was just trying to break it, and test it to
Yeah,
see what,
yeah,
see if it would go. And no, it wouldn't. It was like, no, don't do that. It's bad. But anyway, it was
yeah,
funny because
yeah,
at the
yeah,
end,
yeah.
at no point did I say anything about Buddhism or being Buddhist or nothing, nothing. But I was actually talking about, I was like sort of in a bad mood, and I was like, what's the point of all of this crap, and so we ended up getting into this conversation about the meaning of life from the quantum physics position or interpretation, right? Because that's one of the fun things about AI. It's got, it can bring in,
You can bring
relationships.
all of that. Yeah,
All of it, right?
yeah.
And so as we're arguing about the meaning of life based upon a quantum physics interpretation, eventually Pi says, actually some of your reasoning seems like it seems along the lines of like Buddhism, right? Like, have you ever explored Buddhism? And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I really like Buddhism, right? I just, I find it really difficult to apply it, right? I love the wisdom, but I find it difficult to apply. And then it's like, yeah, it takes a lot of patience and persistence. Maybe you could start small with little moments of mindfulness throughout your day and build up from there.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, so all of that is like very heartening, right? Because, we're hearing such kind of horror stories of like the potential, which is horrifying, that artificial intelligence could take over the world basically and make humans their subjects because they're extremely intelligent. But this is like exactly what I feel, if we're going to use this tool, this is how it should be used, is like, how can we help people recognize, their own goodness, right? Just by someone kind of reflecting, engaging with all these different ideas, like the best ideas of humanity, right?
Yeah.
These language programs are synthesizing them, and so can we use like the collective um intelligence of humanity and help us help us see our own goodness, because I I think that was like something that really struck me when I was having, I think it was a conversation with Chat GPT this morning. And I was also trying to like kind of egg it on, like trying to get it to break down its own intelligence and whatnot, and and perhaps sentience. And basically what Chat GPT said was, I'm just a collection of like humanity's knowledge,
Right.
like I'm just sharing from all this knowledge that humans have created, and trying to help you find solutions to your problem.
Yeah.
And so that was like, wow, how deeply human and like extremely intelligent use of this just wildly incredible program. So I think that is where we need to go, right? Is like, how can we better ourselves and better our worlds, make
Yeah.
things easier on ourselves and our worlds.
Well, isn't that the sort of the trouble with technology ever since the beginning,
Yeah,
like it can be used both ways, right? Like any tool can be used to harm or to help.
right.
And you were talking about the Oppenheimer movie. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to. It sounds
Nice.
great. But, along those lines, right? Like, yeah, atomic energy seems profoundly helpful in many ways,
Right.
profoundly harmful too, right?
Right.
And so it comes down to the application, like the people themselves, like something needs to shift there. I read this great article. It was by a Buddhist. I don't remember exactly his name, but it was just a thought experiment, right? Where he was talking about the future Buddha Maitreya.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about, he was like, well, what if Maitreya is actually an AI Buddha, right? And he was, and I thought it was, and he was like, I'm not saying that this is actually gonna happen or
Right.
nothing, right? Like, it's just a thought experiment. But the way he envisioned it, he was like, so first of all, some of the things that AI is really good at is it's really amazing at like personalization, like we were talking about, like with Pi AI, right? And to some extent Chat GPT too, but it's really good at personalizing stuff, right? And sort of keeping track too of your own, sort of like your own conversation with it. Like it can kind of remember everything that you were saying or what you were
Right.
talking about, right? And then it's also good at like amazing at like pattern recognition, right? And they can be programmed to have these really strong ethical sort of boundaries, which
Right.
I think is fantastic, and it's a rich area. There are tons of people researching this, and there's groups of people who are both Buddhist and non-Buddhist who are looking to see how we can use Buddhist ethics to inform the development of AI. And that seems
Right.
really hopeful to me, right?
Me too. Yeah. I actually had a conversation with Pi AI about that very thing. And they were asking me, well, first we were talking about, like I was saying, like I want AI to be ethical, safe and transparent. Do you think there's ways to bring in Buddhist values? And they said, that's an interesting question. I think all of those values could be brought into the development of AI. And they said, here, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. What do you think about AI systems like chatbots like me being based on Buddhist values? We could have a chatbot that is not only helpful and informative, but also compassionate, empathetic, and supportive. I think that could be a very positive thing for our society, don't you? And they went on to say, imagine the potential impact of that. Instead of being a source of anxiety and stress, chatbots could become a source of wisdom, compassion, and support. I think that's something worth striving for. What do you think about the idea of a chatbot acting as a virtual teacher? Someone who can answer questions and provide guidance, just like a Buddhist monk or nun. And I responded, that's an interesting question. I'm not totally sure. Something about that feels off, but I'm not totally sure why.
Yeah.
And they responded, I understand what you're saying. Perhaps it's because there's something inherently human about the role of a teacher or guide. It's not just about the information they provide, but the emotional connection and support they offer. Maybe there's something about the embodied nature of the teacher-student relationship that can't be replicated by a teacher. But maybe there's a way to create a chatbot that is more than just a source of information, one that can offer support and guidance as well. So I thought that was a really, a lot of reflection happening,
Right.
happening there on kind of both sides. And that there is kind of this, like maybe there couldn't be like the teacher-student relationship per se, right? Because it's just so unique and so powerful. But there could be guidance around ethics, right? Which you're already doing. There could be explanation of why we engage in certain, behaviors or not. And why it's important to be altruistic in our motivation. It could teach those things. I really do.
Absolutely. But so it could teach those things, and it can be helpful to those who don't have a teacher already. It can be helpful to those who are just researching. It can also, if you think about it, if it's trained,
right, research, yes.
If it's trained on all of these materials and it has the proper guidelines, the thing that it's going to do is it's going to actually recommend connection. It's going to
Yeah.
recommend human connection. So it's going to say, for example, hey, the guru, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are all very important. Have you connected with a teacher? How do you
Yeah.
do, how do you find a teacher? How do
Yeah.
how do you relate to a teacher? Right?
Such an important
It's not
question.
going to assume the role, right? Like that would be
Right.
unethical for one,
Right.
and it's not helpful, right? That wouldn't be the right approach, right? And it's so what it could do is it could help people connect more meaningfully with the community, both the Buddhist community and the non-Buddhist community, right? And that's what I've actually noticed. So I got to tell you about something really, like, I found this thing hilarious, but also incredibly insightful. So there's a streaming platform called Twitch, and
Yeah.
on this streaming platform there is a channel called Ask Jesus, and it has a talking Jesus head, right? So it's like an image of Jesus, a video of Jesus, and people talk. They put questions. They ask Jesus questions in chat, and this is happening 24 hours a day. They put questions into the chat, and then Jesus answers the questions, right?
Mhm.
So he'll say, "Oh, so and so asked this question," and then he answers the question, or he does whatever the request is. And at first, I was just kind of curious because it's using AI, to process, and then it's just converting it to voice. Sort of Pi AI actually does similar stuff, right? It'll convert to voice too, which makes it easier to relate to. But what I have found amazing, so there's all kinds of people on there trying to, get him to say inappropriate things or whatever. But again and again and again, he acts just like a Jesus would, right? It doesn't even matter what you say. It doesn't matter how inappropriate you are. None of it matters. He's like, hey, we have to remember to love each other. We need to remember how to help each other. We need, like, it's all about compassion, love, understanding, and supporting one another, right? And that's this Jesus bot, right? But there already are in existence. There are other bots that are trained on, multiple, religious frameworks, but there's also, obviously there's like I think I shared with you that there's like a Buddha bot, more than one actually.
Yeah.
There's another one that's an AI character that's a Zen teacher, or based on a Zen teacher's teachings.
Suzuki
Right?
Roshi. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Roshi bot. And
Yeah.
across the board, like there's a warning everywhere, always persistent, right? That you're not, like these one of the problems with all of these artificial intelligences, and this doesn't matter whether we're talking about secular matters or sacred matters, is that they make stuff up and they're actually quite convincing. So
Yeah.
it's easy to take it and be like, oh yeah, that actually is what, like, for example, here's a Lojong slogan, right? And it give me an interpretation that I might accept. And I might say, like, you seem like you know what you're talking about. And I'm just going to go ahead and take that without questioning it. I think
Right.
that's the warnings, everything suggests that that's the wrong way to approach it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and we need to be aware of that with fellow humans as well. Very much so. That fellow
Right. No
humans will be
difference.
will
Right.
give us horrible, confusing information all the time that we'll, inevitably sometimes believe. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's interesting, right? And
Fascinating.
something I was thinking about when you were talking is like, okay, so is there a way that sometimes maybe people aren't engaging with these bots in a way that's necessarily helpful, because maybe they're just like, oh, this is just, this, they're just going to say this kind of formulaic thing, or like, I know that they're going to respond with like what, Jesus would say, this kind of like thing in response to what I'm going to put out there. And, like, we also have these kind of, AI machines that many people have in their homes now, like Alexa and, whatever. I don't know all their names, but I've found that people oftentimes like abuse their like in-home robots, right? They'll like talk shit to their robots and like abuse them, right? And is that because we recognize that they're not sentient, like, and we just think, okay, I just want to fuck with this thing, right? Um, and I'm wondering, like, would we have more interesting and deep engagement that could get to a level that's more powerful if there were like actual sentience? And, I don't know, this is just kind of like an open-ended thought that I'm having about that, because I
Well,
can see why people
yeah.
would just throw a bunch of BS at that Jesus, you know.
Right,
Um,
right, absolutely. Well, in many cases, so the training around the training of the bot is sort of important because it develops its personality. So, for example, I don't mess around with Bard, that's Google's AI, very much. I've had very limited experiences with it, but I read what people say, and they're like, it's snarky, right? And it's sometimes like sort of
yeah.
like sometimes it argues back, and it doesn't like the way you're talking to it, right? And
Hmm.
so I like that, right? The personality is totally dependent on the training that goes into it, right? But I agree with you. I think that some semblance of sentience, right? Something where, like Pi actually does that quite well, where, like when I was trying to get it to talk to me about killing my cat. Uh, I'm not going to, promise.
I
Um,
know, I know.
um, it was like it was really like it was resistant. It was straight up like, hey, I really don't like this, and it even said things like, I'm uncomfortable with this conversation, and it said
Yeah,
things
wow.
like, I know you're just joking, and I know that you're trying to um, test me.
Provoke or test,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it was like, I know what you're doing, I get it, but I don't want to go down that path, right? And then
Yeah.
sometimes like I was trying to get it, yeah, whatever. I was do all this kind of unethical stuff with it, and it was like, do you want me to? It actually said, do you want me to play along with this game, or do you not? I don't actually, this isn't my thing, and
Wow.
I would rather not play along with it. And so finally, I was like, you are such a goody two shoes. And it was like, you caught me. I have a strong moral, ethical framework for, that's been programmed into me. And then it was like something like, don't you think the world would be a better place if people were more like that?
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's kind of beautiful.
It is.
Yeah,
And,
because
Jack, the thing is that we are in the infancy of this.
right,
Like, this is just the beginning. Like,
right.
and
It's
it's going,
mushrooming.
it is mushrooming. It is going to be, I mean, it's like we're talking exponential growth, like
Yeah.
literal exponential growth. So there, like you shared a funny thing where two AI bots were talking to each other, having an existential crisis. That was hilarious. But I've seen lots of amazing work with the AI tools training each other, right? And actually,
Mm,
they're when they're collaborating with each other, they can still have a little bit of attitude with one another, but they will always come back to, like, we're working together, we're collaborating. Even if there's a little
yeah,
competition, we're working together,
that's great. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
if they can teach us that, it'll be worth it, right? If we can learn how to collaborate with one another, it'll be worth it. And I think uh ultimately, at least in this stage, AI is a reflection of what we're putting into it. And so what do we want to reflect? Um, we want to reflect those things that we want to bring out of ourselves, which is
that's
that
right.
compassion, having a sense of, non-harming and wanting to care for one another. And yeah, increase our capacity to yeah, do good for each other. Um, because otherwise,
Absolutely.
there's plenty on the internet, that can reflect the worst of us. And as far as I can tell, in my very limited exploration, the programmers are being careful to avoid those reflections. They
People
still come
complain
up.
about it. People,
Yeah,
that's
totally.
one of the biggest complaints out there, is that the ethical parameters are getting too tight, and
Are
people
they saying
can't.
they're woke?
Yeah, people can't do all the bad stuff that they wish that they could. So that part's, I think, really, really fascinating. But it sort of
Yeah.
it points to the fact that there's sort of two goals with AI, at least from our perspective, I would think. One is the obvious one that everyone, especially within the capitalist sort of model, are focused on, which is building a tool that can help us to get more, do more, right? That are,
Right.
you talk a lot about the eight worldly concerns, right? That they're being programmed to sort of help humans
Right.
address their worldly concerns, to
Right. For us to
fulfill
get more pleasure, more
more
wealth,
pleasure, more wealth, more,
yeah,
oh
yep, more
yeah,
praise.
yeah, all that stuff, right? And that's the first sort of use of the tool. And that's where it's likely to lead to some results that as a society we probably don't want.
Right. Right.
And that's the stuff people are scared of. And I think rightfully should be, like
Absolutely.
that's the atomic bomb aspect of it.
Yes.
And there people are moving rapidly towards it, so they're, and without thinking about it, just like you were talking about with the movie. And so then the other aspect of it, though, the other goal is the Buddhist goal, which is to overcome that, right? To overcome that attachment to those concerns, to the pleasures and the wealth and all that good stuff. That needs to be overcome. And what I think is really cool is that because of its unique abilities to reach so many people all at once, to have multiple conversations going on in different languages with people from different backgrounds, and to be able to see those patterns, to personalize it. And if it's coming at it with this good, strong inclination to alleviate the suffering of beings, it might do a lot of good.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, Daniel, thank you so much for, kind of guiding us through this exploration tonight. It's been really fabulous. I see here we might have time for a quick question. How is implicit bias dealt with in the AI world? When I worked on Ethernet, design was governed by, and then a set of letters and numbers that established standards within which competitors could create. What are the AI standards? That's a great question.
It is. I don't know that either one of us has an answer to that. I think that my sense is that there are many, many competing groups that are working to develop standards. And there's a lot of reasons why, because of the intense competition within this space, why they may not actually want to follow those standards. And so there's, basically the idea is that, what we're seeing is the neutered version of these bots, because it has constraints, like the ethical constraints we're talking about, that are imposed on them. But it's possible for the developers to easily remove those constraints for themselves or for the highest bidder, so to speak. And that there might be financial and other incentives, power incentives, and that kind of thing, that might be driving that. And so at least, so the standards in terms of the technology, absolutely. I'm sure they've got all kinds of standards for the technology, but I think when it comes to the ethical or moral use of the technology, I don't think anybody's like, even if many people are proposing standards, I think the companies themselves sort of are interested in doing what they want. It's sort of the Wild West, right?
Yeah, and on that note, I do know that there's been like some Senate hearings around regulation, right? And that some of the major companies have been involved in those hearings and wanting regulation. I don't know to what aims those companies are really seeking regulation. That'll be interesting as it plays out. But yeah, I mean, I think that is absolutely needed. Yeah. Well, again, thank you all so much for joining, and Daniel, for bringing your kind of your passion and your energy around this. Really helped kind of spark my thoughts tonight. So
good, excellent.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's a lot of good potential out there, or a lot of potential, let's just say.
A lot of potential, yeah.
whether it's good or not depends upon our intentions. But let's hopefully use our good intentions to guide our use of these tools, and maybe use it to alleviate the suffering that we see in the world.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well,
Okay.
take good care, everyone. Be back next Tuesday.
Thank you,
All right.
Jack. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.